Hello, welcome to the October 20th, 2023 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can submit questions in the live chat field, or you can send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in real time may soon be eclipsed with the number of questions as they come in. I will go through all of the questions chronologically. So if you don't see an immediate response to your query, if we could avoid asking the same question over and over again, that would be appreciated. Just kind of slows down the process as I have to read through the 600 or 700 comments during the live stream. And also when asking, if you could specify which version of Cubase it is, whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro. Also which version number, so if it's version 11 or 12. Also which operating system, that information will be helpful. And we should have an index of all of the topics that are discussed in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field, so that when you could quickly look for particular topics and jump to that particular area. So several hours after the live stream ends, I'll take a dinner break, and then I have to rewatch the live stream and type up all the questions. So you could look for that. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and we can thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that website. And I do have a Word document if you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de with the links to the 28,000 plus topics that we could, I'm happy to share. I think it's also in the Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource for the Steinberg community. We'll give special thanks to Jazz Dude for his work on compiling all that information. And we also want to give a special thanks to Jazz Dude and Agent K, who serve as moderators for the live stream. They're not Steinberg employees, but they are just wanted to make the community a better place. So we'll give a special thanks to them. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, and I primarily focus on Steinberg products. So I'm the host of the live stream. I'm presenting from just outside of Washington, D.C. In Alexandria, Virginia. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And with that, we'll go and get started. All right, so we have Dr. Ayman from Jordan from Home Studio World on. Thanks for being on. It's always wonderful to see Michael Marshall from Somerset, UK, and Stefan from Sweden. All right, so we see from Captain Energy Music, Pennsylvania. He just says, "Hi Greg, how's everything going?" He says, "Don't know if you heard or not, but the montage is going to be available as a plugin next summer. Man, this is going to be amazing." So yeah, I heard about it. I've known that it's kind of in the works for a long time, so it'll be very exciting to have kind of all the montage sound sets directly as a VST plugin. So I think it's a wonderful move by Yamaha to do. So opens up a lot of doors. All right, so we see Uno Memento checking in from Finland, and we see Jan from Cubase Index. We see Jazz Dude on. Okay, so we see from Home Studio World says, "Greg, I have a problem in the main menu bar. File, edit. It works at the beginning, then completely freeze. No any response. Why?" So, maybe, I'm not sure if, sometimes when stuff like that is going on, I'm not sure, I haven't heard of, just it freezing, like the menu bar being, frozen, but maybe if another part of the program is like the active window, or if there's another program. So let's say if I come over and I have this as my active window, the menus for the program may not show up. One thing that you could try to do is, try restarting the program and disabling the current preferences. So if you're on Windows, if you hold down Alt Control Shift, or in Mac OS, you could hold down Command Option Shift. start the program and hold those buttons down, and then you could start with the ability to temporarily disable program preferences and see if you bypass the preferences if that behavior persists or continues. But usually I haven't seen Cubase act in that way. It could be maybe systemic of, maybe a video card or something else that's causing the computer to kind of freeze up as well. But if you could let me know which, if you're on Mac or PC, which version of Cubase, that information would be helpful. And sometimes I've seen it also, like I've had people who run into similar things that maybe had too many things on the USB bus that was getting, and USB bus didn't have enough power. So try disconnecting a USB peripheral or two. If you have something else that's plugged in, like I have one thing that if I plug in on my USB bus, like through a hub on one computer, will cause my Cubase to act up, and it's just a power. And I resolved it just by running that on a different powered hub, and that fixed the problem. Okay. All right, so we have Maswiri Mahadi just saying hello to everyone. Thanks for being on the live stream today. Okay, so we have Sammy the Ball asks, I want to record a MIDI file. When I hit stop, the whole MIDI data is deleted. How can I solve the problem? So let's say if I have a MIDI event here and I want to record. All right, so we'll just come and... All right, so let's say if this is maybe set to the wrong input. So let's say if I record and this MIDI input port is set incorrectly, I could hear the sound. And let's see, when I stop recording, so make sure, sometimes if the MIDI, or if it's just set up to monitor, I could come over here and hit record. And then the MIDI won't actually, be recorded. So make sure that you have the correct, you could set it to all MIDI inputs. And then as you hit record, it'll stick. But if this is set to the wrong MIDI input port, then, or if it's not getting MIDI communication, then if that's set to the wrong MIDI input port, it will, at that point, kind of disappear because it didn't see anything from the correct MIDI input port that came in. So try that. All right, wonderful to see Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. Thanks for joining us today. Very loyal attendee, even before we did it on the Club Cubase YouTube channel. All right. All right, so we see that Jazz Dude just mentions that the Word document with all the topics is available to download in the Cubase Nation Discord. All right, so we see Sable Winters just saying, greetings, last day for voting, last minute campaigning, so probably for Grammys. I got my special Billboard issue with lots of for your consideration ads, so. And I helped out in mastering on one of them in the ads for. Okay, so we have Falun, Sweden here. Jonathan, thanks for joining us. And we have Scintillator checking in from Portugal. Thanks for being on the live stream today. And we have SJK just saying hi from Germany, East Zone. And we have Jam Tracks reunions. Brian from Seattle, Washington. Beautiful city. I love going to Seattle. I haven't been there in a long. All right, so we have Angeli Lucis, how to automate BPM. So if you wanted to, let's open up a tempo track here. So we'll just add a tempo track. So as we record changes, so if you wanted to automate our BPM, so first is make sure that the tempo track is turned on. And then we could say, okay, at this point, I want the tempo to speed up, to slow down. So now as we listen to our click, then we'll hear the click get faster, then back, then faster again, and slow. So now it's going to follow those particular tempo changes. If we hit Control or Command plus the letter T, you will have a little function. Let's go to the little setup, and there is a tempo recording option. And what we could do is just click on Start Recording. And then if you want to use like your mouse scroll wheel, you could just kind of write tempo changes in and do automation. So I don't think it will respond to like a MIDI message, but you could use your mouse scroll wheel to speed up and slow down and write in different tempo changes. So that way we just kind of come over here. And you could automate tempo changes that way. So again, in the editor, just Control or Command plus the letter T, and that will take you into the tempo editor. And you could do like a live recording if you wanted to, or if you just wanted to change on specific points, you could do that very easily as well. All right, wonderful to see John Barry back from the English Riviera. Great to have you back on live. Not sure if you've been lurking, but wonderful to see your name pop up. All right, we have Tommy C saying, hey, Greg. All right, we see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Okay, Jam Tracks Reunion asks, hey, Greg, how do I move an audio event back to the original time code? It has been moved, nudged, etc. to a new time code that I don't want. I tried move to origin, but that menu didn't work. So I will go ahead and just record. So usually the move to origin is the correct function. So, but let's come over here and I'll arm this track for record. I'll just select a bus. Okay, so as I come, I'll record this. Okay, so we have an audio file here. If I go to the audio track this time, that would help. Sorry. All right, so we're going to punch in. And we'll have this called rock loop. Okay, so we have rock loop 01. So now when I do this, if I move the event, you could go to Edit and then choose Move to Origin. And that places it at the correct timestamp position. It could be sometimes people may move a file. There is a function if you go to Audio to update origin. So if I've moved the file and updated its origin, when I come here, we can say move to origin. It's going to go to the newly updated origin time. And you could also check to see, to make sure that the origin is kind of what you thought it was. If you go to the pool window and if you slide over, so we say, rock loop 01. So as we slide over here, you could see the origin time and we can see it represented in bars and beats. But if your master time is set to seconds, we could now see it in seconds as well. So you could just come over and see the origin time listed there, but generally it's going to be moved to origin unless, but it is possible maybe that the origin, can be updated. So, but let me know if I did something differently than you, Jam Tracks Reunion. All right, wonderful to see Benny checking in from a cold Sweden. Okay, John Costigan wants people to lightly press the like button for the thrill of a lifetime. All right, so we have Daryl Lloyd from Fort Washington in the house. It's probably 2 or 3 miles away. I'm just right across the river from you, in between Old Town and Mount Vernon. So glad you can make it today, Daryl. All right, so we have Zephaniah back, and he asked, when I use Spectre or Mystic in the same song, they crash. How can I prevent that? I'm using Cubase Artist 10 on PC. So I haven't run into any problems with Artist or Spectre. They're no longer included in the latest versions. But if you have a particular song project that has them in, even if you just have like the 2 particular tracks that you want to share with me, I'd be happy to take a look at it and load it into my older Cubase versions. So, but if you want to share it to me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I'd be happy to take a look at your particular files. All right. So we see Value just says, hey, happy weekend, everyone. Values from Vienna in Austria. All right. We see Capital Razor on. All right. We have Richard Michael just saying hello. Glad you could join us, Richard, today. Okay, so Value says record on tempo track. That is fabulous. So it's kind of a hidden little feature. All right, so you see, Greg, thank you again. Is there any way or tip to let Microtuner work with VSTs, not Steinberg VSTs? If not, please consider it in the coming versions. Thanks. So the Microtuner, if you're not familiar with the Microtuner plugin, so it does work with non-Steinberg VSTs. So if you're not familiar with it, we'll just kind of show it here. So let's say I have just erase this part. So all right, so we'll have different notes here, and what the Microtuner plugin will allow us to do is say, okay, I want to take we'll go to our MIDI inserts, go to Microtuner, and I can say, okay, every G note, I want to come over here. I want to make every G note sharp, and I want to make every F note flat. So as we play this back, and we have the Microtuner plugin open. So we could detune every single note. Now, why we're able to do that is because, the instruments that come with Cubase have this capability of individual pitch shifting on individual notes. And this is really kind of the whole premise, like one of the big premises of MIDI 2.0, because, in MIDI 1, you have the capability of having, if you applied a pitch bend or a tuning or a MIDI CC message that's applied not at the note level, but for every event on that MIDI channel. So with Cubase 6.5, we came out with VST 3.5, where we added the capability of having individual note expression so that we could have controllers dependent upon individual notes instead of being limited to just a channel. So the vast majority of instruments don't take advantage of that. So contact your instrument manufacturer. It's just a part of the VST 3.5 spec. Not many have taken advantage of it, but we can't necessarily write their code for them. But there is a standard that this works with. So it's not a conspiracy or anything like that. We're not holding it back. It's been a part of the VST spec for, for maybe 10 years. So So reach out to your reach out to the other VSTI companies and tell them to support it. All right. Okay, so we see Richard Michael asks, hello Greg, is it possible to take an acoustic guitar audio loop, convert it to MIDI, and then use the converted MIDI into a chord track? If so, can you demo please? So we're not going to necessarily convert it into MIDI if there's chords, but I'll show you, but we can just go straight from the from an audio track. I'll show you an example here and create a chord track. So it's not going to necessarily convert it into MIDI, but let's say I have a chord track here. I'll take a guitar part, and I'm just going to drag this guitar or MIDI part to the chord track. And now we've automatically created the chord track from the guitar. So you can also just drag it right on or select the track. If you go to your project menu to chord track, you say create chord events, and that will automatically do an analysis of your acoustic guitar part and do the chords for you. So that's all you'd have to do. So it's not going to necessarily convert it into MIDI where we could change the notes, but it can extract the chords, which is what I think you want to, where you want to get to at the very end. So. All right. See, we have Tommy C, just talk about some future stuff. We have Bass Arocious. I always love that name as a bass player. He says he's looking forward to learning answers to all of your questions. So great attitude. All right, so we see Jam Tracks Reunion asks, can you demonstrate how to use phase coherent editing on multi-mic recording and talk about how that is useful for a drum kit or another multi-mic situation? Okay, so we'll show in a drum set scenario. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. All right, so let's say, you just have, and this is often going to be used like for drum recordings, or maybe you're doing rhythmic correction on a guitar that, maybe an acoustic guitar that has two mics and a DI that have been recorded. But what we could do, let's say I have all of my drum tracks here, and we'll just go ahead and solo the drums, just. Okay, so if I wanted to, move all of the drums and kind of keep the different elements aligned, what we could do is I'm going to just open up my quantize panel. So we'll just come over here and we'll just open up, just adjust. Okay, so open up our quantize panel. So first I want to take, I'm going to select phase coherent warping. All right, and so we put it all into a group. We can now come over and just say, okay, we want to open up the quantize panel. So we're going to select one of the events. And what we want to do here for drums is to say, okay, I want my kick and snare to have high priority, and maybe my hi-hat to have a different priority. So we've kind of placed slices based upon the priorities that have been defined here. So, and what we can do now is just create warp markers from these particular hit points that we've kind of defined the criteria and priorities for. So now at this point, we will switch to our free warp tool. And now instead of having, if this hit came in a little late, but that, let's say this kick sound or the snare sound was also captured in the kick mics, the hi-hat mics, the overhead mics, the tom mics, we could now align these all together so that as we adjust one, they will all move together as a particular group. So if it's like, oh, you know, the drummer just was really off here, we can now just assign and move these to be, you know, directly on the grid. Now, if we had a multi-track guitar recording, let me see if I still have this one. We just open up one project here. Just find a okay, so we'll open this. So if I wanted to do this to two guitars, I may not have to do like the phase coherence, but you know, if you're just doing it on guitar parts, so let's say we're listening to, so now if I have both of these selected, I could come over to my time warp tool and let's just put in, and I'm just going to select both events here. So as the events are selected, I could now, instead of having to do this separately, we could apply it to different events. So we can say, okay, I don't have to record, you know, once I come over here, I have my hit points, I can now move the two events simultaneously like so. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right, wonderful to see Grant Nicholas on from Baltimore, and we see Jeff Zabelski from Chico. Great to have you on. Glad that you're able to make it earlier in the live stream. All right, Alessandro Ponti. Hi, Greg. Checking in from a rainy Italy. Would you have a macro to highlight the highest note in a chord or choral passage, something like in Dorico? All right, so let me just... open up this project. Okay, so let's say if we wanted to open up like the highest, if you want to open the, select the highest note, we can just go to like the MIDI logical editor. Okay, and we'll choose select. Type is equal to note, and we will come over here, say context variable, and we'll say it's equal to the highest pitch. So we can select the highest pitch like that. If you wanted it to, if there is a chord track that's associated with this, I will come over and okay, so let's say we have kind of a chord chart here. So we could choose the context variable, and then we could say, let's select the position in chord from the chord track. So you can say, okay, and I wanted this to be like the 5th in the chord. So now as we select, I could choose to, you know, select the fifths in the chord, or if we wanted to select, the major or minor thirds, you could select, different, so you could do position in chord. You could also say number in voices in the chord part. So 1 here would be root. So say I wanted to select, if we have 7th chords, maybe the 4 position here, and then you could select the number of voices in the part. You could also just select, so position in chord, note number in chord. That's probably what I was thinking of. So let me just switch this, say note number in chord 4, and if there's any, this may not have any 7th chords in it, so we'll say the 3rd. Then we could select the 3rd, position in a chord with 0 being the root. So a number of different options for doing that. So let me know if those would work for you. So using the MIDI logical editor. Okay, so we see John Barry asks, hi Greg, feature request for Q-Sends to have their level available for quick controls like regular sends do. Says, cheers, I can control the master level for Q-Sends but not the feed from each track. All right, so let's say if I wanted to go to, just open up quick project. All right, so I'll jump here. Let's see if we can get this set up for you, John. You might be able to do it through the MIDI remote. Okay. So I'm going to set up, let's say, 3 Q mixes here. Let me go to my audio connections, and let's see if we have. All right, so we have 3 Qs. So we'll say in this case, I'll make it drums, bass, guitar, and you can hit the tab key just to name the next one. Okay, so what I want to do is we'll go to kind of our full mixer, and we'll make sure that we have the Qs available, the Q sends. All right, and I'm just going to right click here, and we'll say all Qs, we want to activate all the Q sends. And we want to use the current mix levels. All right, so now when we go to Qs, we can see that these are populated here. All right, so let's say if we want to set up, let's see if we could set up like for the selected channel and have 4 faders set up to control our Qs. So I'm going to go to the MIDI remote. Now we'll see if we can get this going. All right, so we'll go to our MIDI remote. I'm just going to use my little Korg Nano control. We'll put it into a new page. So when I come here, I want to take this, and let's go to selected track, Q sends, Q1, level. All right, so now I apply the mapping. Let's go to Q2, level. And I go to my second fader, and let's go to Q3, apply the mapping. All right, so now once we're in our mix console, I go to F3, fader 1 is controlling drums, fader 2 is controlling the bass. So let me apply this to, I'll put the Qs on all of the channels in the project. So, and again, I'll just kind of right click, activate all the Qs. just kind of use the current mix levels. So now when I move like those 3 faders on any selected channel, so this channel is selected, I could control the Q mixes just like that. So let me know if that's helpful, John, but you could now just come over here and move your 4 Q mixes, and you could save it in the MIDI remote, just as, come over to the mapping, and then you can make a new page, and then your new page could just be dedicated to controlling the Q sends. So when you click here on, you could have that labeled as Q sends, like I've created a number of different mapping pages here. But now, as soon as you're into full screen mixer, whatever track you have selected, you can just use those 3 faders from the Korg from your controller and be able to control those kind of like quick controls in essence. So I move, these 3 faders, I'll select this one so you can see me move the faders here from the MIDI remote, and that will automatically apply the values to the Q mixes just like that. So let me know if that's helpful for you, John. It's great to see you on again. All right, so we see Jam Tracks Union just says move to origin. Great, thanks so much. I'll look at that again now. My audio is already at the beginning of the Arranger's Y. So. All right, so you see Richard Michael just saying thank you. All right, so we have Nick R says, can you please explain how to set the sidechain on tube compressor inside Halion Sonic 7? Or inside, okay, so let's take a look at it. Okay, I'll just do new project. Okay, so we'll add an instrument track. Let's load it up. Halion 7. And we'll just find kind of like a synth voice here real quick. Okay, so let's say we have something like this. I'll just record a quick part. We'll draw a note in. All right, so now we're going to, all right, so we have that. Let's go to the mixer and let's put it, all right, and just make sure, all right, so let's put the, we'll say that, just make sure there's a tube compressor here. Make sure I have the right plug-in. Okay, it's tube compressor. Okay, so we will activate the sidechain. Okay, so the sidechain is active, and I'll just want to put in maybe a kick sample. Okay. So let's put this sample on beats 1 and 3. And now select the range and duplicate. Okay. All right, so what we want to do now is maybe have this. All right, let me just get rid of that note. All right. I'll move this up. Okay, so let's see if we go to our sends here, and then let's go back to our sidechain. All right, so let's say so we have this. All right, so now we have this kick that will feed the sidechain. So I activated the sidechain in Hallian. All right, so let me just adjust kind of maybe the gain stage. So, but that's how you would kind of just do. Just get the right. But that's how you would do the sidechain routing from an instrument that's on that particular track from another source. So make sure you have the sidechain turned on there, and then you could just do sidechaining. All right. All right, Seth Munson asks, Greg, is there a way to snap cycle markers to clip start and end points? It's annoying trying to line up cycle markers to the exact sample I need. So if you want it like the cycle markers here, so let's just come over and say we'll add a marker track. So add a marker track, and let's just put in, so I'm going to now hit the letter. So let's say these files are, I'll turn my snap off. And let's say as we move these particular sounds slightly earlier or later in time that we want to set the cycle markers. So what you could do is select the event. I'm just going to reread this to a clip start and end point. So select the event and hit the letter P. And now just click here to add cycle marker. And then that will add the cycle marker directly around the event, because the event now, so select it, hit the letter P, that moves the left and right locators, and then click add cycle marker, and then the cycle marker is perfectly aligned with the event. So select the event, hit the letter P, and then click add cycle markers, and then those will be aligned so you don't have to manually adjust it. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Seth. Great. Okay, so Ted Springman from Los Angeles. Great to see you on, Ted. Thanks for joining us today. Hi, Greg. Can I use a mixer volume fader as a CC source to control any of the cutoff value on the ladder filter plugin on the same channel? So I'm not sure if you wanted to, so if we had, let's say, automation going on, so let's say we had volume automation going on this particular event, right? And I want that automation, and let's say if we go to all right, and let me just reread real quick again. So generally, you know, the automation will be, if it's going to be like for an audio track, will be set, you know, the automation will be set here. But let's see if we select the automation here. So I'm just going to go below. So let's say I copy, just Command or Control C, and let's say if I go to, you know, my, we'll come over here to more. Let's say we wanted to go to, you know, my Hallian 7, and I wanted this to do, let's say my resonance, my filter resonance. I could select that. Let's come here and paste. Let me see if we could, if that works. So copy. And then I'm just going to use the up arrow. Let's see if we can paste at origin. Now, if you have it for MIDI CC7, you know, if it's, I'm not sure if it's volume for an instrument or volume for an audio track, but if it is like volume, if it's like CC7 and you have a particular CC message, let me just see what happens. We just enable. Just try copying one more time. But if you wanted, if it was a MIDI CC message that you wanted to drive another MIDI CC message, you know, that would control the parameter in the instrument, what you could do is just a MIDI plugin, and you could choose like the MIDI transform. So let's say you wanted to go from, if it's MIDI CC7 volume on a MIDI track, so we'll go to our transformer, and then we'll say we want to take MIDI controller 7 volume, and then we wanted to convert that into controller, let's say 77. So we'll say value 2 or value 1, we want to take controller 7, and then we're going to add 70 to make it controller 77, and then you could have the volume, like MIDI volume or MIDI CC from one track control MIDI CC, which could be controlling a parameter in your instrument, like your cutoff value. So, okay, we see a question. Why and what are HSSE tracks? Why do they pop up, and can they be deleted? So usually you may notice that HSSE tracks, and it stands for Hallian Sonic SE, may appear as soon as you drag like a MIDI file from a plugin into the timeline. So if you go to your preferences, you can go to import, go to preferences, to MIDI file, and then you'll see destination. If it's set to Hallian Sonic SE multi-timbral, when you drag a MIDI file into the project, it will load up a particular, a Hallian Sonic voice to play the MIDI file back, but you could just have it go straight to MIDI tracks or to instrument tracks if you wanted to. And if you have kind of like an unwanted HSSE track, all you'd have to do is it's probably going to be added as a rack. It may look something like this. It may say, and Hallian Sonic SE has kind of been replaced with just Hallian Sonic now. So if you see the HSSE, if you go to the instrument rack, so if you get to the VSTI, just come here and choose no VST instrument, and then that will delete it from the project window as well. Okay. All right, so we see, hi Greg, any timeline on when the new online store will reopen? I know you're looking for a new vendor, so I think it's pretty close. I may have a really good answer for you on the next live stream on Tuesday. So it may go through kind of a quick test to make sure the mechanics of it are working as expected. And then it may be kind of fully implemented, and then, if there's new versions coming, they may come shortly after, but they just need to. So you may see it opening pretty soon with, with maybe like a test scenario set up for making sure all the mechanics are functioning. So, but, ask me maybe on Tuesday. So I might be able to share more information. All right, so we see Jammin' and Cannon says, greetings, Greg and everyone. Going to be great. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so Jam Tracks Reunion says, perfect. Thank you very much. And a phase coherent walkthrough. All right, so we see, hi Greg, Cubase 12 Pro. I have 16 VSTI tracks in the right zone. How can I change the order of them, please? So once you have a number, these will be just showing up in the order that they are added. So, if we come and say, okay, I want to add an instrument track, and we add a number of, different instruments, they will, be added in the order, they'll show up in the order that they were added in, but there isn't, and once that is set up, we could think of it as kind of like a placeholder. So there isn't necessarily a way to drag these, but anytime that you go to, like let's say I add, so a lot of times I haven't really felt the need to change the order of these because I could change the order of the tracks on the project. They still go to the same instrument. So I think a lot of people may, just add instrument tracks, and they don't necessarily worry about the display order here of how the instruments were added, but there isn't necessarily a way to change the order. These will reflect the order that the instruments were added, but if there's a specific reason that you need these to be changed, as opposed to changing the tracks here, let me know, and I could pass it along. But I think that once these are added, that they can't really be kind of dragged and dropped to change the order, and I'm not sure if there's a real reason to, but let me know or I can't think of one, like a benefit, because you could just select the particular track here, and that would automatically select the instrument. So, but let me know if there's another reason that you may need it to change the order. All right, Jammin' and Cannon asks, one question, Spectra Layers is not loading on my guitar track. Could this be that I've glued the part and have to render it? Thanks in advance. So let's see if we glue parts. It might need to work on the audio events. So let's say if I now come here, let's go to the Spectra Layers extension. All right, and now when we, yeah, so I think you know, what you could do is, let's say now we go to the track. So, you know, go to, you know, if you wanted to go, you know, so it looks like it works on events as opposed to parts. So you could go to your audio menu and choose dissolve part. And now when you double click, it will just be loaded up into Spectra Layers for you. All right, so we have Ariane just saying hi to everyone. All right, so we see from Arian, hello Greg, when you first load Cubase 12, scanning VST3 takes a long time. The next time you boot, scanning is fast. This bothers me when I first launch Cubase 12. Can this be fixed? So generally the very first time that you're initializing Cubase, it's going to go through and do a little quality assurance test of the plugins. It measures the plugin's latency. So that it knows exactly how much to do compensation for. Once that everything has been set, at that point it shouldn't, you know, it basically should open up faster, but the very first time it is doing kind of a quick quality assurance check of the plugins. That's why it may take a little bit longer. Or if you add a bunch of new plugins, it may automatically, you know, scan those plugins to make sure that they aren't going to be causing system instabilities, measure the latency, and organize them in particular folders. So. All right. All right, so we see from Jam Tracks Reunion, how does the audio alignment panel work? I attempted to add 3 kick drum audio tracks, but clicking the plus did nothing. What am I doing wrong? Is the tool only for vocals? So now you can do it for any source. So let's say, I'll come over here. We have 3 kick drums in this example. All right, so let's say these drums are slightly off time. So I'll just... Okay, so what you want to do is open the alignment panel. So we'll even just come over here to, sorry, I usually have it just, so we'll open up the alignment panel. So what you want to do is to choose, so let's look at, if we look at our timeline here, we can see that these kicks will be starting kind of at different positions. So what you want to do is to take the track that you want everything to match, and that's your reference. Okay. So, and now I want to select these 2 tracks. We're going to add those as a source. And if it's in musical mode, you may have to bounce. And now what we want to do is just say align audio. And now that we've done that, my computer's going to wake up. All right, so now that we've done that, we could look at the 3 different tracks and they will be in time again. So click plus to add to reference. That's the one that you want the other tracks to time to. Select the other tracks, use those, select those as targets, and then hit align audio. But you could use it for drums, guitars, all sorts of vocals, other sources as well. All right, so we see Ted Springman says, hi Greg, is it possible to assign certain on-off switches in Cubase to keys on a MIDI keyboard, or even change output routings simply by pressing keyboard notes? So you could do it, a number of different ways. You could do it using kind of a generic remote. So let's say if I add a new device, okay, I'm just gonna make up a device here. All right. Okay, so I want to make buttons, and let's say I'm just basically gonna populate different areas using keys on my keyboard. So let's say this key, what do I want it to actually do? So we could double click on just that particular event. Let's go to, just make it a little larger here so we can zoom in and out. Okay, so we'll go to our mapping assistant. So let's say this is just a key. And at this point, so let's say I want this to turn mute on and off. So I'm going to select that particular function and we'll say mute selected track. Okay, so we'll apply that mapping. So now when I hit that key, it's just going to, mute. We'll close this window here. And now that will mute the selected track and unmute. So usually where things can be kind of turned on and off, but let's see. And if you wanted to change output routings by simply pressing a keyboard note, so let's say we could do this by triggering like a project logical editor. So let's come to my audio connections. I'm going to add just an output here. We'll say add bus. We'll make it a stereo out. We'll call it Ted Springman. Okay, so now I want to create a project logical editor. And we want to transform, our media type is selected, or container type is selected as track, and the property is, let's say, is selected. And what we want to do to that track is come over here and say we want to go to track operation, and we'll connect output, and we'll set the output to Ted Springman. Okay, we'll save it as a preset. So once it's now saved as a preset, so what I want to do, and I'll just make sure that function is working as expected. So I'll select this. Let's go to my project logical editor. And now I want this track to be routed from stereo out to Ted Springman out. All right, let me just... Okay, we'll say property is set to selected. Okay. Okay, so right now when I come here, I hit this button that's routed to my Ted Springman output. So I want to assign this particular function. So we're going to say, let's go to our MIDI mapping. We'll select this button and go to Process Project Logical Editor. And you could even just search and just say Ted Springman. Let me just... Key commands, let's go to... Let me just check my naming on that one more time, make sure I saved it. Oh, we didn't save it, so. Okay, so we'll call it Ted Springman. Let me just close that, let it repopulate. All right, so now I'm going to assign when I hit this key that it's automatically going to trigger this. So one key would be mute the track. Let's say I go up here, I want to mute, and I want to hit this button and route it to output Ted Springman. So you could just, again, have your MIDI automatically, I come here, let's mute, on and off, and this button, and just on my MIDI control is just sets the output. So you could create a project logical editor and then be able to kind of fill those. All right. All right, so we see John Barry says, thanks, Greg. That's a workaround I could use, but still not sure why it would be omitted from the quick controls. Let's just take a look at, and this is with the Q mixes. So let's go to our quick controls. Let's see, I think this we may still have. Okay, so what I want to do is click on the Learn button here of quick controls. And let me, so if you come here, click on the L button. It's come right over here, and now we can say quick control. I go to the second slot, and this could be quick control 2 level. Let's go to quick control 3. So if you just click on the empty slot, click on L, you could now set the quick control levels right there. So now any of your quick control functions, get my quick control here, you could save that and adjust the quick controls for your Q mixes. Let's see what label it kind of comes up as, But if you go to so it may not be selected channel, but you could try that as well and see if, let's come over here to this track. So I'll save this as a preset. All right. Okay, so when I come, let's say to my bass track, I'll load up this preset, and let's come over here and see if it does the quick controls on the bass. So that may just do the quick controls on that selected channel, but I think it's pretty good workaround to use the to use the MIDI remote to do it like that. So you can do it, but you can't necessarily do it on a selected channel for quick controls. So it may be faster just to do it through the MIDI remote. Okay, so we see home studio world. Remembers their question. All right. Okay, so let me see. I'm sorry, my chat field just jumped on me. All right, so we have a question from Kansun. So I tried to create a trigger MIDI track for a sidechain of a gate effect to put on a pad sound, but the sidechain didn't let me choose the MIDI track as input. Any solutions? So you don't do it from the, because MIDI is not going to trigger a sidechain necessarily, but you could use the audio output from a, that's being generated from a MIDI to a virtual instrument. So the sidechain is always going to be triggered from, directly from an audio source, but there are, if you wanted to do, but there is like a plugin, we'll show you here, called a MIDI gate. So let's say if I'll revert this, and we'll show you just a little trick if you wanted to do it on a particular track. So I will, let's say I wanted to do like MIDI to gate my drums or my guitars. Let's say I'll take this example and I'm going to send my guitars to a bus. So select them. All right. All right, and on this bus, I'm going to open up a plugin called MIDI Gate. So I believe it's going to be under Dynamics, and we'll see MIDI Gate. Okay, and what I want to do now is to add a MIDI track. And we're going to set its output to our MIDI gate. All right, so now as we're playing, so now when I just hit a MIDI note, the guitars are muted until, and if you wanted to, switch the mode, so you can say, as soon as I hit, note on, so all you have to do now is come over here. As soon as you hit the MIDI note, it's going to let the tracks go through. So if I open up just let's say just a quick MIDI keyboard, any note. So as soon as I come over here, we'll just say, okay. But generally, for the most part, gates are going to, like gates for compressors and a lot of plugins are looking not for an audio signal, or not looking for a MIDI signal, but an audio signal. But if you wanted to kind of do the same thing quickly and use MIDI, or use an existing MIDI track as the basis, use the MIDI gate, and then you could take the same track and use that to open and close different sounds without having to have the audio from the particulars as the sidechain input. So let me know if that works well for you. All right, so we see from Home Studio World, many thanks for getting an iconic library. I'm surprised there is no MIDI CC related to glissando, note sliding, articulation in violin play mode. Is there an approach to such an articulation? All right, so let's open up an example. Let me just look for a particular project here. So I'm not sure if you actually tried Portamento or not, but let's... And I think a lot of people may, like if you're just, may just... may use pitch bend or portamento. So let's say if I want, let's see if it responds to portamento messages as well. So let me go to my input transformer, and I don't have a portamento on. See if I can find the MIDI CC for portamento quickly. All right, let me just see if we... But, try portamento. That may work. I mean, pitch bend works, but it's not defined. But, maybe if you have a portamento switch, try that. I could see if I could get it set up for the next live stream and find the portamento number, or if someone knows the MIDI CC portamento number, we could try it. Okay, so we have Nick R. says, my question is, when using Halligan Sonic 7 and layer like guitar harmonics mixed with tuned Udo, having tube compressor sidechain, to better hear strings with the Udo inside Hallion as an instrument. Okay, so it's probably going to, let's see if we could recreate that. I may approach it by, just increasing the velocity of, the particular instrument. So let's say we want to do like a multi-instrument. All right, so we'll do guitar harmonics. All right, and let's say we want to do, I think it's Udo. All right, so let's say if we're, just see if I can find a better harmonics here. Sorry, I'm just. All right. All right, so if you want it, wanted the, let's say this will be Udo here, or Udo, sorry. Okay. All right, so send them to two different outputs. But you could, so what I would, I would probably take an approach from MIDI to say, okay, let's come over here. Let's go to velocity. And you can say like only at particular velocity levels kick in the Udo. so you could do it like that. But now that they're going to different outputs, we could select the guitar harmonics, and this is, we consider this more kind of a left-handed approach. But if you go to your dynamics, to your tube compressor, and again, activate the side chain, activate side chain here, and then, so this will be, let's say, so now I could take this sound either way, go to the audio sends, and as we do this, do the side chain, and we could now just come right over here and just side chain right into the Hallian and control the dynamics that way. But I would try to just, play around with the velocities between each of them as well. I think that may get you a better approach. I mean, this may work as well, but to me, it's a little more left-handed. All right, so we see DL White is just saying Happy Friday. He's ready for some Cubase wizardry. So hope I can. All right, so you see Jam Tracks Reunion says, I think if you press Alt-P, it would set cycle markers and enable loop in one go. So I think that Alt-P would just play the current cycle markers, but let me just check. See, maybe I'll learn one of my new tricks today. So we'll come over here, let's add marker track. Okay, so we have marker track, and let's say if I just have an event here, an event here, an event there. So I think if we just hit Alt-P, that it sets the markers and plays it around the event, but it doesn't add the cycle marker. So, but if you just come here, select the event, then the cycle marker will be derived from the particular left and right locator position. All right, so wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. Glad you can make it today. And virtual ice cream distribution has begun. Okay, and Michael Teams wants everyone to whack and smack that like button. All right. Appreciate the kind words there. All right. So we see Sable Winters just says, Greg, what project did you work on? I want to listen. So I helped out in a very, very small way with the Niels Lofgren record with my friend Greg Lukens, who did the mastering on it. So Niels, if you're not familiar, I mean, he's a wonderful solo artist and amazing guitar player, and he's like really well known. He has a great solo career, but he's also really well known for being in the E Street Band with Bruce Springsteen. So. All right, so we see Best Screen Jesus just says, hey, Greg, I'm looking for the setting where it records during the count-in. How do I turn that off again? So if you're recording MIDI or audio, so it's going to be, so if you don't want so let's say if I come and I'll just do new project just to make sure here. All right, so I'm going to add, let's say, an audio track, and let's add a MIDI track. or I'll actually just add an instrument track. Okay, and I'm gonna just route this to a group track. Okay, and then on this audio track, I'm gonna route the group track as the input. Okay, so now I'm going to, all right, so let's say now I'm just playing some notes, and now I hit record. All right, so I'm going to just play some notes. Okay, so I was playing beforehand. So if I go to, let's say, my project setup here, and I'll do a display bar offset of 2 bars. Okay, we'll keep at the current positions. Okay, so I played some MIDI before and after. So if we have our preferences set to, I think it's going to be for the audio under record audio. We could have our audio pre-record seconds. So if you don't want that at all, you could set it to 0. But now if I come here and we roll back, we could see that my audio can be just, I could see what we played 1 second before it actually was in record. So this is where the recording started, but it was capturing up to a second, and I think you could do up to a minute in advance for all of your tracks, just in case you blow a punch or something. So let me know, Best Green Jesus, if that's what you're looking for. Okay, Larry B asks, hi Greg, can you show how to enable start recording at the left markers? Want to have the project playing and record to start as it passes the marker. Is this an option? Thanks, Larry B. So yeah, it's basically going to be just set up for like a punch in and punch out. So we could use our left and right locators to do a punch in and punch out. So what I do is I set my locators here, and we'll see on the transport bar, you could hit I for punch in and O, the letter O in your computer keyboard for punch out. So while this track is record enabled, I'll hit play. And when it gets to measure 4, where the locator is, it should have punched in. Let me just. So it'll just punch right in and go like that. So if I just wanted to punch in, I'll take out the out. So if I wanted to not have it cycle, we'll come here. See a punch in, and if we have I and O enabled, so and again we could see that just to the left of the transport bar. I hit play, punches in, punches out, and so if you need to do just a very small like punch, even just down to like a 16th note, stuff like that, we can set your left and right locators accordingly. So I say, okay, I just want I want to do a punch in. I'll just take my snap off. So now with I&O turned on, we can just do a quick kind of punch in like that as well. So just hit I, and that will use the left locator to punch in, and if you hit O, that will punch out, and that could just kind of automate the whole process for you. All right, sorry, my chat field just jumped on me. Okay, so Jam Tracks Reunion asks, is there a way in Cubase to group certain vocal clips on separate tracks and then be able to copy and paste those as a single entity across the entire arrangement without the need for rendering, etc.? So let's open up a file that has some background vocals that will probably work well for this. Okay, so let's say we have a lot of background vocals here. So if I just select, you could just Command D duplicate those like that. So just selecting the events, nothing special. We could duplicate accordingly. We could also, if you wanted to take just a portion of the events, we could use the range tool. And like I say, I want to take the range of all these events here, this range, not necessarily everything that's contained within the event. And then I could just hit Control or Command D to duplicate, like so. So the duplication will go with what's selected, whether it's events or if it is a particular range. So we can say I want to take that range and again duplicate just like that. So let me know, so you don't have to do any grouping, you don't have to do any bouncing. So whatever is selected, you could just Control D duplicate. And if you wanted like the range to be global, hold down Control or Command plus Shift, and then you could just duplicate like that. So let me know if that's helpful for you. It's from Jam Tracks Reunion. All right, so we see David M. from Liverpool just saying hi to all the nice Cubase people, and Friday live stream sets up for the weekend. So I always feel good after getting my live stream index done on Friday night, and I could relax some on Saturday. Because I'm usually working till 9 or 10 on Friday night, and I'm like, who's the idiot that planned live streams on Friday? It's like, oh, that would be me. So. All right, so we see from Benny, question, how did you do when you showed how to get the correct signal from eDrums and Groove Agent 5? Okay, so the trick, if you wanted to work with, having Groove Agent triggered from like an electronic drum kit, is we'll come over and you'll see this little icon below the far bottom right pad, and this will allow you to set it up. So there's going to be some presets here for default electronic drum kit, and my guess that would be Roland, and they have the Yamaha model right here, so you could have that kind of all set. Once that this is active also, you could just right click on the pads and click on Edit Learn MIDI trigger note. So if you click on that, now you could hit a note on your drum pad, and that drum pad will be assigned to trigger that particular note. So the secret to unlock that potential is found under the bottom right hand pad. It looks like a stick hitting the drum right there. Turn that on, and then you could have the Edit Learn functions or use one of the presets. All right. All right, so we have Mars Needs Max checking in from Houston, Texas. Thanks for joining us. My brother and his family live in Houston, in Bel Air area. All right, so Doug O asks, hi Greg, it's Happy Friday. Is it possible to route multiple MIDI tracks to a consolidated MIDI track? Okay, so let's come over. Just opens something that has a little more MIDI in it. All right, so let's say I want to take flute, oboe, bassoon here. Let's see if we could. Let's take these events, get a MIDI. And there might be like a merge function that we could. Okay, so I'm going to come here, set merge MIDI in loop. And now this one event will contain all three. So you could do that. Now another thing that you could do is drag the events on top of each other. So let's say we have something like this. And then if you grab the glue gun, hold down the Alt or Option key, and then you could go to your glue gun, and then that could also merge all of the different parts into one single event. Usually there's, people would do that more when, there was like a limited number of MIDI tracks, but since MIDI tracks are pretty much unlimited, it may not be as needed now, but you could try either dragging it on top of each other using the glue tool with the Alt or Option key, or selecting the events, setting the left and right locators, and go to MIDI to merge merge MIDI in the loop. So let me know if that will work for you. All right, so Christian Bauer asks, hi Greg, are you aware of an option to get the CC121 to work as a MIDI remote device? Just testing one and wondering how far I can take it with quick controls, etc. Best wishes, Christian. So I haven't really played around with it. I know what some people have done. I like my CC121 for like what it does. I don't really want it to, I personally don't want mine to work differently, but what I think some people have done is take there's like a CC121 extension, remove that, and then you could capture just the raw MIDI data that's coming out of it, but I haven't really experimented with that or tried it. Okay, so we see from Doug O asks, and can you please show us how to route one MIDI drum instrument track to separate audio track stems? Okay. Okay, so let's say I have a particular pattern here for this kit. Okay, so what I want to do is, as we're playing this pattern, Okay, so we see kick, kick. I want these to go out of bus 1. And I want these to go out of bus 2. Alright. So we'll just kind of select these pads here. And we'll send these to output 2. So my kicks are going out of our master out. Alright, so I want this to go out of out 3. I want this little fill to go out of out 4. So we can see that these are all kind of being sent out to different outputs. And I'm just going to drag the MIDI event onto the project, which I have done here. Okay, so now when I play this one MIDI event is going directly to multiple outputs. So we listen to it. So kick, snare, hat, and this little snare fill, we wanted that separate. So at this point, since I have assigned each of those sounds in the instrument, and if we have an acoustic agent, we would choose to just do this in the mixer. So we would choose our different routings for kick and snare. But now that I have that, I could just come over here. Let's go to File, to my Edit menu to Render in Place. I'm going to select the particular event. And we'll go to Render Settings. I'll choose Channel Settings. And at this point, I'll hit Render. And now each of the tracks is automatically rendered to my kicks, snares, hats, and this will be like the snare fill at the end. And that's how you could automatically split. So once you have the outputs here, select the event, go to Edit, Render in Place, and you want to choose Channel Settings, and then each of the outs will automatically be rendered as separate independent files on the project window. So let me know if that's helpful, Doug. All right, so we see Brian Sawyer Sr. from Beulahville, North Carolina. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you're doing well. Always great to see you on the live streams. Thanks for being such a loyal attendee. Okay, so we see Jam Tracks Union Portamento is CC65. So let's see if we get some Portamento action going. Thanks for the look up on that. All right, so let's come here to track. Let's get to MIDI controller. So value 1, we want to add 64. It doesn't look like it responds to Portamento, but try pitch bend. A lot of times you could have that set as well, and that could get you kind of realistic control. But thank you for the CC message to refresh my memory. All right, so we see Jammin and Canon. I found MIDI gate, but I can't find noise gate. Any help would be appreciated. So if you want a noise gate, it's going to be found under the dynamics. So we'll just put it on a track here so you can hear it. All right, and every channel itself has a noise gate. So let's say if we are listening to this, we may have some. So we have like a little bit of. So let's say I wanted to take all of my drums here and let's route it into a group. So because we probably have the count in from the drummer going to multiple microphones. So we'll just come here, we'll put it to a stereo group, and on the stereo group we could just come to the channel. If you go to the channel strip, you'll just see noise gate right here. So we could activate. And let me just take off the. So you could do noise gates there, or just as under dynamics, you'll see gate settings. So you could just come right over here and you could have a noise gate where you set the threshold. So every channel has it as part of the channel strip as well. So it may not be labeled as noise gate, but just a gate. All right, wonderful to see Randy Lee from Texas on. Michael Teams is happy. All right, we see Brian Sawyer Sr. will be off and on today, so has house stressors. We hope everything's going well. All right, always wonderful to see David Reuter and Kristen Parisi from Big Tent Productions in Nashville. Wonderful songwriters. See, Jammin' and Cannon says, at 71 years old, between Greg and Dom, I may have Cubase mastered halfway by the time I'm 100. Yeah, but then there will be many new versions in between, so keeps Dom and I employed. Okay, so we see from Rob from Tarpon Springs, Florida. How do I query all Groove Agent 5s, 12/8, 6/8, and 3/4 time patterns so I can review and sample them? Thanks for your help. Okay, so when we open up, let's say just a quick instance. Groove Agent SE. All right, so there's always this little folder off to the side. And once you click right here, we could see, okay, I want it to go to all agents. But one of the options that you'll have, and you'll see it under musical, will be just set to signature. And then you can say, okay, I want my 3/4 patterns, I want 6/8, I want 12/8 patterns. So you could just kind of come over here. So make sure that you have kind of the browser just to the right here, and for one of the fields, if you click on top, you could have multiple different types of fields, but here you could just choose signature, and then you could see various time signatures there for your drum patterns. All right, wonderful to see Gareth on the live stream. Sorry, I saw that you were on after we went into questions. Didn't get to say hi today, so we're glad that you could make it. I really enjoy still listening to the last song you sent over. Don't Slow Me Down. Enjoyed playing that one. Congratulations on writing such a great song. You see people just asking, Sable's asking, is it my birthday? So it isn't my birthday. So my birthday is November 5th. It's coming up, so I have to figure out something to get. All right, my chat field just jumped. All right. Okay, so we see Ash Rebel Hen Studios from Australia. Says, hi Greg, my friend is upgrading from Cubase 11 to Cubase 12 as it's only $149, but the site is still not allowing purchases. Is there a way he could use Cubase 12 in a demo capacity until the issue is resolved? Yeah, so he can use the Cubase 12 trial version. That still works. And I think we'll see kind of a resolution with the online shop soon. But yeah, the trial version in the meantime will work and function so you can be up and running. And then at that point, when the shop is back up, which should be soon, at that point, he will be able just to purchase it and may be eligible for a grace period. Okay, so Rob asks, hello again, Greg, what is the Razor insert in the Dynamics catalog and when would you use it? So a lot of people use it as kind of a very aggressive multiband limiter. That's kind of an up-down limiter. Let me see if I could have a good example. Something to put it on that might be. So, and it's often going to be used most typically used for like EDM type tracks, dance, kind of contemporary pop production. Let me just. Okay, so I may take off maximizer here. Okay, so let's go ahead to So this is, I'm sorry, I was thinking of squasher, but this is kind of a really fast limiter, which will do like inner sample stuff. So let's say we just want to do so the squasher is more the up down, but you can think of this as kind of just very so just think of so that would be kind of a typical use for Razor, but you could think of it as like a very aggressive limiter. So okay, so we see Best Screen Jesus about the recording before the bar starts. It says perfect. That's exactly it. So glad. All right, so we see Braxel says, hello everyone. Why can't we not buy anything off the Steinberg site? So we worked in conjunction. Our e-commerce partner was a company called AskNet. AskNet has gone insolvent. So, which is kind of almost like a bankruptcy kind of thing. So we're kind of setting up a relationship with a new provider. So it's, at the moment it's being worked on. So it's kind of out of our control for a lot of the different aspects of business stuff. So, we've kind of terminated the contract, and I think they've terminated the contract and they're looking out for a new provider. Takes a little bit of time to get everything set up, but rest assured that there's lots of people working very diligently to come up with a solution, because it's a huge part of our revenue as well. But you could still buy stuff at dealers, and in Braxel, you're in Texas, and if you need to get updates or other stuff from dealers, you could buy from Sweetwater, which offers it as well. All right, so we see from Alex Morgan, great to see you on the live stream. I have an odd bug on Mac. When opening Cubase, I get an alert from MediaBay saying duplicate entries were found. How should this be resolved? MediaBay is then wildly sluggish. Help. So make sure, one, that as you're doing it, that, when you're in MediaBay, make sure that when you're in MediaBay, not to pull, sorry, that when you're in MediaBay, that you are only looking in folders. Like if you've moved content over manually, it could be that MediaBay is looking in different folders from your system. So make sure that you don't have network drives attached and that are being scanned through, or like a USB stick, or a sample. Sometimes people will have network attached storage, like a Google Drive set up, and they have media on there, and MediaBay is looking to access files from a cloud-based thing, where that could slow down the whole process as opposed to doing everything on local drives. So make sure that that MediaBay is looking at the local drives. And one other thing is if you go to Preferences to MediaBay, we'll come over, and you could make sure that MediaBay is, there's a function that we could have it scan folders only when it's open. Uncheck that, because MediaBay can scan in the background, and sometimes people will open up the MediaBay, it starts scanning, they close it, it stops scanning, they open it again, it starts scanning, and it doesn't get a complete scan through. So make sure that you don't have duplicate drives or a backup drive that's being seen, or being MediaBay is told to look at as well. All right, wonderful to see Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo. All right, so we see a question from Tim. I have a question: is it better to use Cubase or Wavelab to convert a WAV file into MP4 file, or Apple format? Wavelab will have kind of all the settings set up for iTunes delivery. So that will allow you to, deliver it for MP3, for, different streaming services, and have, multiple file formats, including for iTunes, which would I think it does the MP4 files that way. So Wavelab would be a better choice. All right, so we see John Barry's. We're glad he can make it, and he's doing a house renovation. His house is 150 years old. So, yeah, we moved into a brand new house at the very end of 2019, but the house we were living in before was 120 years old. So I understand old house renovations, which is really ancient in the United States. So it's pretty regular probably in UK. All right, so we have a question. How to import MIDI regions of multiple tracks from old Cubase session to new but same template of another Cubase session, also at cursor position. All right, so you could try, so let's say I have this project here and I want to import at cursor position. You could go to File, to Import, and we'll say Tracks from Project. So I will all right, so we'll say, okay, I want to import these from Schubert project, and I want these MIDI tracks. So say flute, oboe, bassoon, and hit OK. And we can see that this time I'll do it at position. So again, come over to Import, Tracks from Project. All right, and here we will choose to import at cursor position. Hit OK. And boom. So you can just do it kind of like that. So once again, just go to Import, Tracks from Project, select them, and choose at cursor position. All right, so we see Nick on, and that he has whacked the like button. Let me clear my throat. All right, sorry about that. Everyone's happy to see Nick on. All right, so we see from Tommy Valenko, hi, great question. Is there a way to save empty preset to Cubase with my settings or default settings? So if you, a lot of times, naming a preset default that has nothing, so I'm not sure if you want it for a plugin or if you want it for an instrument or for a track, but a lot of times you could just come over to, like, say if we go to the channel EQ, like a lot of times saving, different plugins, like if you, so let's say if we come over here and we go to our plugins, that we could just come over here, so we could save as default preset. But let me know, like, if what is empty, if it's the project, if it's a plugin, if it's a channel strip, and I may be able to help you with that. All right, so we see John Koskian says, I would like to suggest a minor change to the Edit Learn Trigger Note button on the bottom edge of Groove Agent. Make it full screen, 3D with explosion, sound effects, etc. Just in time for Cubase 13. Might be too late to go through testing, so, but who knows. So you just see a comment from Jazz Dude, says maybe Greg knows more about US sellers who actually sell Cubase 11 and Cubase 12 updates. So I think it's the only retailer in the world that could do it is Sweetwater. So and that's only for the American market. So each country could have different distribution rules. So, like dealers in the U.S. can't sell outside of the U.S., and dealers in Germany can't sell into the U.S., etc. So, see that Gareth has 19% FAT in Spain. So Gareth just says, "Are we dangling the dingle dongles again?" So, and Nick is always quick to point out our good friend Dave the Songle. So, all right. So we see Pablo says hi to everyone from La Palma. Yeah, he's been able to make the last 3 or 4 live streams. Always great to have him on. All right, so Pablo's in the Canary Islands on vacation. So I hope he has a wonderful holiday. All right, we have Gerald Ely checking in from Cali, so thanks for joining us. And Gigi saying hello. All right, so Gigi just asked, do you know what initializing logging is? Cubase Pro 12 just started showing that screen after having initialized all the VSTs, etc., and it spends at least an additional 90 seconds before it starts. So it could be sometimes if there is a crash report, sometimes you could have it a report of like where you were before the crash. So I think if you go to your preferences, it might be under general. So there's a usage logging option. So maybe try to uncheck that and see if that speeds it up. But that just kind of keeps almost like a map of, what happened before a potential crash, so that it could be isolated. All right, so Ash Rebel Hen Studios question, Greg, you rock. Well, thank you for that. Is there any way after applying MIDI modifiers to see the changes applied back into the MIDI data region? Okay. Okay, so let's say we have chord track here, and I'll just get to Rhodes. Okay, so we say our chords to MIDI. Okay. All right, so let's say we have just kind of block chords here. Now, once we come over and I wanted to, let's say we'll put the arpeggio on. Okay, so now we listen to this, what was block chords. And we'll put on All right, but we don't see that. So if we want to, once we've applied this and we want to see the changes in the particular event, all we have to do is go to your MIDI menu and you'll see freeze. These are MIDI modifiers, so we'll choose to freeze MIDI modifiers. And now once we've done that, the actual track here, the plugin has been disabled, and you see the results of the plugin on the events themselves. So again, just go to MIDI to freeze MIDI modifiers, and then you'll see the reflection of the processing going on in the MIDI effects in the actual events. So it's almost like a render in place for the MIDI data that's been modified. Okay. So you see Gareth just saying, "Where You Were Before the Crash" might be a great song title. Well, there you go, Gareth. You have to go rate the song this weekend and send it over so I can play bass. All right, so we have Craig Nobles checking in from West Virginia. Just made it, so glad you can make it. Not too far from me. All right, so we see that Soren's new album's coming out November 3rd, right before my birthday. So congratulations on getting that done. Looking forward to listening to it. All right, so we see what is VST Ambi Converter for? So that's when you're working with ambisonics, and that will convert ambisonics so that we could hear kind of the spatial aspects of an ambisonics recording and have it converted down to stereo so that you could, do your ambisonic monitoring with headphones. All right, so we see from Ash Rebel Hen Studios, brilliant Greg, thank you. All right. All right, so CGG says deleted preferences. Cubase 12 takes at least 2 to 3 minutes to start. Most of it's spent in not initializing logging screen. Never saw it before, so give that, try disabling the preference here. Oh, not that one. Just go to your preferences, to general again, and see if you turn that off, if that makes a difference for you. Okay, just reading through different comments. All right, so we see, hi Greg, can we change the kick of a beat sample in Cubase? So I'm not sure if it's like within a loop or if it's like if you have a kick and you want to easily change it. So let's say, let me know which one, but I'll show you if we wanted to like replace a kick that's used multiple times on your project window. So let's say I want to take this. So say I have this kick and I want to replace this kick with other sounds. I can just say, okay, let's go to kick. And let me just look in a particular folder here. Okay, so we'll say kick. And then if you hold down the shift key and drag it on top, you could replace all the instances. And just audition different kicks. So just drag it over top of one of them and hold down the shift key. So let me know if that's kind of what you want to do. So again, just drag over top, hold down shift, select all, and you can replace all of them like that. Okay, so you see from Gigi, just says same thing happens with Safe Start. Usage logging is not on. So I'm not sure what's causing that. I could do some more research on it. I think you may have sent a message earlier. I'm sorry if I didn't reply to it. But if you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I'll do some more research on it. Sorry about that's happening to you. All right, hi Greg, I'm looking for a solution to switch my entire chord pad preset to another one via MIDI. Can you help me with that? Okay, so let's say we have chord pads here. So if you need to, so let's come over. Okay, so let's say while we're here, if you need to switch, so I'm not sure if you need to switch presets via MIDI. So, you know, when you come over, we'll say, okay, let's go to like just our presets. So we can say, okay, we're going to load a new chord pads preset. So let's see if we come over to Media Bay and I think if we go to factory content, to chord pads, that you usually see kind of the chord pad presets there if you've done them. So you may be able to navigate it within Media Bay. But I don't know of a way to, within here. But one thing that you might be able to do if you needed to see more chord options is if you do go to the setup, you could go to the pad layout and switch from keyboard to grid. So if you needed a lot more chords available, so maybe instead of switching that you could just add more chords, more chord pads to work with. So while it may not switch, you could just trigger these particular chord pads from MIDI messages right there. So maybe look into that. And see if that could be useful for you. Okay, so you see Craig Noble's. See, maybe this is it possible to move punch points on MIDI instrument track, having sustain issues when punching in and out something with a lot of sustain, like strings or piano, moving punch points like you can with audio tracks. So if you have, once you have punch points, and if you're not familiar with punch points, what they will allow you to do is to set up, like, let's say I wanted to have like my drums play here. So let's say I wanted my drums to loop roughly from here to here. So we have a cycle marker. And let's say I wanted to give the musician a bit of context. All right, but I just wanted to punch in on one little part, so I could grab the range tool. And let's say now what we could do is just come over to, so whatever the range is set to, we will go to your transport menu and we'll see punch points, and you could set the punch points based on selection range. So now whatever I have selected with the range, we could just come over and set the punch points based upon the range selection. So if we move the range, I could adjust that and again just set the punch points directly to the range selection. And they could be, I think we could manually move them as well. So let's say while we're here, while it's not playing, the punch points can be manually moved, but I always like to set them just with the range tool. And again, go to transport to punch points, and you could go to the punch in position, set that, but I always like the set punch points to the range selection. So once you have that range selected, hit that and the punch points will be set. And then while it's not playing, you could manually move. If we take snap off, you can place it freely anywhere you want or have it snap to the musical grid if needed. Okay. Okay, reading through comments. All right. Okay, so we see it says, thanks, Greg. This is exactly what I wanted to know about replacing the kick. Appreciate you helping with it. So glad that was it. It's a pretty cool solution. All right. All right, so we have the artist known as Love, checking in from New York. Glad you can make it today. All right, so we see from Dalbsky, Greg, how do I make a sample easy, double time, or half time? All right, so let's say we had, I'll just do new project. We'll just drop some loops in. Let's just find some. Okay, so let's say I want to take this. All right. Let me just adjust my project start time quick. Okay, so let's say we have this. All right, so let's say this is matching. So let's say I want this to be half speed. I want this to be double speed, this to be half speed. So a couple different approaches. So let's say I want to come and I'll just bounce selection. For each of these, we'll replace the event. Let's replace. Okay, so say, well, this is. I'll look at the origin time here, tempo. In the pool. Okay, so say 115. So let's say this one I want to make 62.5. And this to 30. So if you change kind of the time, and then we'll just take it out of musical mode. All right. So, but even like if I want to take that beat, even before doing that, let me just come here. You know, like I want this to be. You know, if I just change my master tempo, I could now just, while that's in musical mode, play it at this tempo. Oh, sorry. Did automation instead of tempo changes, so we'll just drag that up. So let's go to a tempo track instead. Sorry, brain cramp. And then when it gets to here, you can just have it play faster. So you could do stuff like that. You could also just, do time compression. You could, so there's a number of different ways depending on the project, what you want to do. So if you just wanted to, play back at different tempos, you could have, different events with different tempos if you wanted to as well. But, musical mode will probably work with that. All right. All right. So we see David M. just says punch points to selection is a wow moment today. Okay, so we see Craig just says, sorry, wasn't very clear. I'm referring to when you've already punched in and re-recorded a section, notes are either cut off or will keep sustaining. With audio, you can drag the event punch points. All right, so let's say if we have, I think I understand now, sorry for misunderstanding, but let's just add a quick... All right, so let's say I record something here. All right. All right, so let's say I want to punch in at a particular point. So we're going to go just switch our MIDI mode. And we could choose, whether you want to create new parts, overwrite, keep last, or stacked. So if we want to, let's just say linear mode, I could just say, let's put it into new parts. So as I punch in, that now we'll have our two events that are kind of on top of each other. So if you need it to roll back, you can see that this event is basically stacked on top, and then you could choose at what point that you want to kind of roll back or expand that particular part. So now and if you wanted to, you could have the part underneath it automatically kind of gone away. So if you wanted to, let's say if we have this in like a loop record, we could also just switch our MIDI record mode to say stacked. So if we want to now come over here and that we could have our different events that will be in different lanes. So as we record, let's say I'll just come. That we could have different lanes of events, but just experiment with your different, you could replace. So let's say if we want to put this into replace mode, I'll take it out of cycle. So punch in. So it really could depend upon your cycle mode. So, maybe experiment with merge or new parts. And while if you have new parts set up, you could also have it, work with different modes like delete overlaps. So if we have it set to new parts, we'll come here, record. So even now we could choose between our different events like this when we see it in lanes, or if you go to preferences, we could choose to go to editing and activate delete overlaps. And now we hit apply, and if we wanted to, we'll take this out of lanes, that when I move an event over, that it deletes the events there. So, or if you don't want that. So even if we had this event now that was punched in, I could take this event and, you know, you could just kind of trim it if necessary. So, but try the stacked mode. But and experiment with some different MIDI record modes, and you could get what you want. Okay, so we see from Ash Rebel Hen Studios that I need to put on a seatbelt because this question is going to hurt. So I am seated, so. All right, and the question is there any way to export multiple MIDI tracks from Groove Agent, let's say, back into Cubase as WAV files simultaneously? Okay. Okay, so let's say we have all right, so just like we showed a little earlier, I'll get it set up again. I think we still have it turned on. Okay, so let's say I have this as my Urban Ballads kit here. All right, I'll start from scratch. Okay. Just revert. Okay, so we have multiple MIDI tracks. Okay, so I'm going to open this up. Let's go to Groove Agent. So we have, let's say, a pattern here. All right, so I'm going to drag this pattern. So I'm not sure if you need to, we just add a MIDI track. And we're going to take like this little snare fill at the end here. So okay, so if they're on one particular track and we wanted these routed to let's make sure I'm reading it right. So export multiple MIDI tracks from Groove Agent, let's say, back into Cubase as WAV files simultaneously. So let me know if this is kind of what you're looking at, but let's say we go to our setup here. So while we're listening to it, all right, so I want these kicks to go out of out 2. So I could select here out 2. And let me just kill all my solos. Okay. And I want these to go out of output 3. So I'm just assigning the outputs here in Groove Agent. I'll just start this from without any routing real quick here. Sorry. Just make it a little easier. Okay, I'll just my tempo down a little. All right, so what I want to do now is I'm going to take off my punch in. All right, so let's say we have our pattern playing here. All right, so I'm going to click here to open up my view of different outputs. So we'll say kick to output 2, output 2, and I want my snares to go to output 3, out 3, and let's say my hi-hat is going out of output 4. Okay. All right, and I want this snare to go out of output 5. Okay, so we see our outputs. This is our little snare fill, our hi-hats, and I have this event. So say I drag this particular pattern to my project window, and then really all I had to do is whatever is kind of selected at that point, and we can do this for multiple events. So as we play this pattern, kick, snare, hi-hat, snare fill, and then all we have to do is go to edit to render in place, go to your render settings, choose channel settings, and now each of the events will be just rendered independently, just like that. So we have our kicks, snares, hats, little fill, all just like that. So let me know, Astro Rebel Hen Studios, if that is kind of what you wanted to accomplish. All right, so we see from Jeff Sabelski, he says, I've reinstalled eLicenser and it fails number 1, 5, and 6 of the maintenance test extensions not seen in Cubase 12 or 11 Pro. I have Wavelab Pro 10 to reinstall, no workflow. I better stop. And so let me know if there's, you know, if there's a particular thing that's not working or opening for you, that would be helpful, Jeff. Okay, so we have Alan David Daly from Ireland dropping in. So glad you can make it today. All right, wonderful to see Michael Pierce from outside London. All right, so Julix just says thank you for continuing your teachings. Yeah, I think just like live stream 340 or so since COVID hit. All right, we see Value has to head out. Thanks for joining us today. Always wonderful to see you on. So we see from Brandon Laser Concept, thank you for the explanation so far. What I'm looking for is how to switch chord pad presets remotely while using the same MIDI trigger notes. Yes, I don't know of a way of like switching different chord pad presets, but I'll play around with it more over the weekend. Maybe I could do, triggered through a lot through Media Bay. We see Uno Memento is sharing beers. Everyone's always so generous. All right, so we see Greg, sorry, I will ask a question properly. If you have 10 separate MIDI tracks and you wanted to import them back into Cubase as WAV files, can this be done simultaneously? All right, so let's see if we have, I'm going to get rid of these tracks here. So let me just, all right, and what I want to do now is we'll go to MIDI and I'm going to dissolve the part and separate the pitches. Okay, and I'm just going to make sure that my routing isn't going to mess this up. So I'm going to load the kit again. So we have no routing kind of going on here currently. Okay, so everything is now going to one part. So let's say if we have multiple ones, so I'm going to select this. I'm going to choose the event, go to MIDI, and we'll set this up. So we'll separate the pitches. So here we're going to have, let's see, 6 different instances of Groove Agent loaded up, each playing a different sound. Okay, so we go to our VST instruments. We can see all the multiple Groove Agents here. So each one of these is going to play back a different sound. So we'll have kick 2, hats. So, but if I wanted to now take these multiple drum events, I'll unsolo and see if just so I can see if I'm understanding correctly. Just make sure I'm getting this right. Let me just find. Okay, so thought I saw this. But if they're all kind of on different tracks, like what we see here, I could select these, and then if I wanted to turn those into audio, I could again just, and if I wanted to, get rid of the MIDI, I could select the tracks here. We go to our edit, and we'll choose render in place. So we're going to say render with current setting. I'll go to my render settings. We'll do our channel settings, and on my source tracks, I'm going to choose to remove source tracks and hit. And now I probably had it, but at this point I will not have it armed for record. All right, so I'll take that arm off, come to render in place. So I'm going to remove the source tracks, hit render. And now each of those has automatically been rendered like that. So all right, so Uno Momento wants to get 100 thumbs up today. So right. All right, so we're at 96 likes. Thanks to everyone. All right, so we have Club to Breathe checking in from Rio in Brazil. Okay, so we see Ash Rebel Hen Studio says, Greg, you got it, brother. Legend. All right. Glad I could take my seatbelt off now. All right. All right, we see Jazz Dude with a great Socrates quote, I know that I know nothing. So I always look at like learning something like Cubase or an instrument as like you look at someone and you think, oh, they're at the top of the mountain, they're at the top of their abilities, and every time that you're climbing a mountain, you realize that you get to the next ridge, and then the mountain keeps getting taller and taller. So it's a never-ending quest. All right, so we see from Jeff Sabelski, says, Greg, eLicenser says, has my Wavelab 11 Pro full license, but only 10 opens. It shows no license found when opening. Do I have Wavelab 11 Pro license when it's in my eLicenser server issues of messages? So make sure, because Wavelab 11 had transitioned depending on the version that you're running, whether I think at 11.1, you had the option of running it as either Steinberg licensing, or you could activate it as Steinberg licensing or USB e-licenser, and with 11.2 it was Steinberg licensing only. So look in your Steinberg licensing and see if that opens up if you go to your Steinberg activation manager, if you see Wavelab listed in your Steinberg activation manager as well, because 11.2 can run under the Steinberg under new Steinberg licensing. All right, so we have 100 likes. That's great. Thank you for all the likes. Appreciate it. All right, so we had some questions that were mailed in. Let me get to those. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. All right, let me just open up my Word document here. Okay, I'll get my project. It's kind of set up for today's questions. All right, so we had a question, how to open two separate drum editor windows at the same time. Okay, so let's say I open up this in my drum editor, and we'll open up this in a drum editor, and I go to open up this information in a drum editor. All right, so we want to be able to see these in two separate windows. Now to do that, what you can do is go to a preference, and you go to editors. You'll see the editor content follows event selection. Uncheck that. We'll hit apply, and now I could open up this drum editor. I'll resize it. I will open up this as a separate drum editor. And then we could move this over here, and to see both of them at the same time, if we go to your Windows menu, we can now come over. We should see probably the other drum editor window open. So this is how we could have two separate drum editor windows showing the individual parts open at once. So again, go to your preferences, go to editing, and you could now just come over here and to editors rather, and uncheck editor content follows event selection. And then you could have multiple edit channel windows. You could also have multiple drum editors open as well. All right, so we see question, congrats on the Milestone Club Cubase edition. Hope you're doing well. In other programs, there's a function, convert drum to new MIDI track, where an audio file containing different drum parts is automatically converted to a MIDI track, and at the same time, the DAW interprets and maps the kick, snare, etc. onto different MIDI notes, also presenting velocity. What's the closest we could do to one-click functionality in Cubase / Groove Agent, please? I'm aware of hit points. Method to map is simple snare part to MIDI, for example, but the extra step here is to analyze the drum loops for different sounds and map them automatically to their own MIDI notes. Example, all the snares go to the same note, and ideally be able to do this with as few as possible steps. So Groove Agent SE, the one that comes with Cubase, doesn't necessarily do this, but the full version of Groove Agent will. So let's say I will open up a full, and this is one of the cool things you can do with a full version of Groove Agent. So I'll open it up, and what I want to do is I'm just going to drag a drum loop over. So we'll play this drum loop just so you could hear it. All right, so I'm going to drag the drum loop over to the pad. We will select the slice tab. We're going to create our slices. And now we have, and this isn't in Groove Agent SE, but it's in the full Groove Agent. We can say, let's classify. So now, as we listen to this, we can say, kicks are this color. Hi-hats. We can say we have, let's say, snares. Now, as we work with this, we say, okay, this should be maybe classified as a snare. I could, once we select, we could just right click here, and then we could say, set to, let me undo that, sorry. So if we just left click rather, we could say this is a snare, and we'll say that this one is percussion. Okay. Okay, so this one we did the wrong one here. Let me zoom in here so you can see it a little better. So this one should be a snare, and you might have to tweak just a little bit. So say this one is percussion, and let's just quickly, okay, so you know, once we do this, it is selected. So again, we'll make this percussion. And if you have a simpler loop, and you can see, so we've now come over and extracted the, and identified. Now, when we go to our pattern pad, we can now come over here and say, you know, this one is the best of the hi-hat of the snares. I want to use this particular sound every time we play the pattern. So let's say we play the pattern, and I could say we're going to right click and we'll say set notes of snare class to D1. So now every time it plays a snare, it's going to trigger that one particular snare sample for us. So that's how you could do, and again, this isn't necessarily in Groove Agent SE, but the full version of Groove Agent will allow you to kind of classify the different sounds and replace sounds as you see fit. And you can classify, so there's some kind of artificial intelligence aspects going on with that. All right, so we see, hi Greg from Soren. I need to ask, is it possible to do step input to MIDI from the chord pads with patterns too, without patterns? My own testing shows that nothing of that is possible, but it might be something wrong. Have a nice day. So there isn't really a way of doing, you know, chord patterns as step entry. You know, but what you can do is, let me just come over here, is just drag the, you know, drag the chords to a particular track and have the chords populate it like so. And if we go to our chord pads, let's say, and I'm going to turn off my, the plugin here for my micro tuning. All right, so, and let's say if we want to go to patterns, we can, all right, I'm just, so we'll say, let's go to patterns, and we'll have just, let's say, a default piano pattern. So if I want to drag the pattern out, I think it's still, so, but you can drag kind of the chords out, but it doesn't work kind of with step entry. I'll just drag it out one more time. I thought maybe that would, yeah, it's just gonna be block chords. So maybe in future stuff, I think that may make sense, and it could be cool in the future, like maybe to populate like a chord track to have step entry, but there's no real step entry, but you can drag and drop. Okay, so we see question. Can I change workspaces in Cubase 11 Pro by sending MIDI CC from a MIDI controller? Any MIDI controller whose pads can be send MIDI CC. I had an Akai MPK 261 with 16 pads, and I could not set the pads to send MIDI CC. I've seen Tom Hulkenberg, Junkie XL, using a touchscreen to change the workspaces. I would like to use the pads on a compact MIDI controller to do that. So all you have to do, you could do it from a MIDI note message. So on Cubase 11, we would need to do this through the generic remote. Let me just kill the MIDI remote that I built here real quick. Okay, so if I wanted to assign keys to switch different workspaces, so if you're not familiar with workspaces, we could have like a workspace to open up, like faders at the bottom, like almost pre-done. If we want to see like a mixer, if we want to see supervision, kind of pre-done window views. So if we want to assign these to different notes, like notes from your MIDI controller, we go to your studio menu, to studio setup, and I'm going to add just a generic remote. So we click here, let's add a generic remote. All right, so let's choose generic remote. I'm going to set my MIDI input and output ports of where your pads are connected. And the easiest way to do this is we'll just click on Learn, hit the pad. It's going to capture that MIDI note. We're going to come over here to Command. Let's go to Workspaces, and we're going to recall Workspace 1. Now I go to this second lane. I hit the MIDI note. So we see we go from note 36 to 38. I go to the matching fader here. We'll say Command, Workspaces, Workspace 2. Let's go to 3 here, hit my MIDI Learn, and we will choose Command, Workspaces, and Workspace 3. So now I will hit Apply, hit OK, and now I could switch between these different workspaces just like that. So again, you could just do that entirely in a generic remote. So when you come over here, select here. So what you select here is going to match the values here. So when you go to, you need to go to fader 2, fader 3, fader 3, choose Command, Workspaces, and then you could assign a workspace. And then you could be totally cool and feel like a power user like Tom, because he's a cool guy. Very smart guy too. All right, question. I'm recently backing up, archiving everything that I've worked on. And I'm wondering if there's a proper way to archive sampler tracks, just like backing up Cubase project files and putting everything together so that you don't lose any data, including the sample file itself and how you edited the track, including inserts, etc. So, when we have a sampler track set up, all you have to do is, let's say, okay, I like this particular, we look at my pool. So I'm going to open up my pool window. We see an audio folder. And we'll just right click. So I'm going to drag this file into the sampler zone. Now we open up our pool. We can see that, we now have added a sampler track. And we can see that this audio file is in the sampler track. And this is going to be stored into the project. Now, when you drag audio into the project, we could now come over, and there is a preference where you could say, if you go to editing to audio, and we can say on import audio files, you could say copy all files to the project folder. So if that's done, anytime that we drag and drop audio into the sampler track, I'll come here. I'll say, okay, let's create a sampler track. So now that we've done that, we'll go to our pool window, Control, Command, plus the letter P. We can see that we now have 2 sampler tracks. And even though that audio file was at a different location, it's now going to be stored into the same folder, into the pool, into the same audio folder that we have right here. So with that preference set, when you save your project, when you drag files in, it's automatically going to be stored into the audio files folder, and then you'll have a sampler track folder, and that's where all the sampler track data is stored, so that when you open up the project, Cubase knows exactly where to find the content for the sampler tracks that you've added. All right, so we had a question. Hi, is it possible to get device ports in numerical order? I took a photo, and they were kind enough to attach a photo. So I've never run into this particular issue. So I only have like a 2-in, 2-out interface. But what I would do if you're going into your audio connections, and let's say, okay, I wanted to add multiple inputs, so I'll say, okay, let's remove this. And the method that I always do that works and will add all of the inputs or outputs sequentially is I'll say, let's add bus. And I say, I want it to be a mono. And then we can say, I just want to come over here. I want to add 24 tracks. So if I have 24 inputs, that will then come over here and remap all the inputs directly in order. So if I have 24 inputs in my audio interface, that will automatically map them sequentially. Now, some audio interfaces, maybe Army, is very flexible with routing, and with flexibility can sometimes come confusion. So if you have like a weird matrix that's set up in like the onboard mixing applet for your audio interface, that may change the order, but Cubase will see the order that's being presented by the audio interface when you go to add bus and you set a number of different inputs right from there. All right, hang on a second. I have a quick call from the office. I'm going to see if I can take real quick. No, missed it. All right. So try that method. I think that will work. All right, so we have, just says, greetings. I'm using VEP7 in Cubase. It's set up to where you use one instrument and then the MIDI channel using 32 channels of audio for each instrument, so basically 16 stereos. Is there any way to have it when I touch the MIDI channel 12, for example, that the mixer instrument channels and the mixer moves to that channel instead of having to manually move it there? This is drag if you're using 10 instruments with 16 channels of audio outs and sliding back and forth. All right, so let's say I want to, let's replicate this. So I don't have VE Pro, but let's add like a multi-timbral instrument. Let's do Italian Sonic. And now that we've added a new instance of Italian Sonic, I want to activate all the outputs. And now when I'll just quickly populate here. So some instruments, and I think that maybe part of the VST3 specification, can allow you to mimic. So I'm going to, we'll just and sometimes I reached out to the question sender. So I want to send these now to different outs. Okay, so each of these are going to different outs. We have our Hallian Sonic, and now I want to add 15 MIDI tracks. And these are all now routed. So when we come here, we can see that with, so I'm not sure if it's VE Pro that's doing it, but within Cubase, with instruments like Hallian Sonic and Hallian, that when I select the instrument, that the mixer output, let's see if, I'm going to hide the MIDI tracks here in my mixer. So let me just, so, if it is a MIDI track, the MIDI track itself, instrument tracks know exactly which outputs that it's going to, but with MIDI tracks, once you do this, the MIDI track doesn't carry any information, and it's, not actually associated with the particular outputs like an instrument track. So I think you might have to scroll, but if you utilize instrument tracks, that you would probably fare better if you have a possibility. I know with VE Pro works better with MIDI tracks, I think, from what I've heard. But, and it could be just the nature of the beast that when you're dealing with MIDI tracks, but an instrument track will take you right to the particular channel. But, MIDI tracks don't necessarily have that information. All right, so I have a question. I've done a fresh install of my computer. Beforehand, I backed up my Media Bay file, but now all Retrolog and other instrument star ratings are missing, which I've spent countless hours organizing. All third-party ratings are intact, but not Retrolog or PadShop. Do you know why? So generally, so I'm not sure if you backed up the MediaBay.db file, but I haven't run into any particular, any particular settings. It's kind of a global setting once you have that particular MediaBay.db. So I'm not sure if it is taken over, if it's on a fresh new system, if the settings were maybe, if you had like Cubase 12 and Cubase 11, if you did the settings in the MediaBay.db file in Cubase 11, if it's going to be that file that the Retrolog presets were done in versus the files for, versus the MediaBay.db file of another version. So if you could let me know that, but check to see if, if you have multiple MediaBay.db files for different versions of Cubase, and maybe you created them in a previous version, like version 11 and you backed up version 12's MediaBay.db. All right, so we had a question. Is there a way to force voicing on the chord track? It always seems to change my input. So let's say we come over here to chord track. All right, so, and I'll take off the, put on block plain chords. All right. All right, so now let's say, so if I wanted to change the voicing just on this one chord, all you have to do is just kind of click. Now you may notice that if when chords are changed, that other chords are going to be reflecting that. So I think if we go, like if we right click, you could just right click on a pad and you can say adaptive voicing. So we'll just say adaptive voicing, and we could let's uncheck that as a reference. So now we could basically have, so let's just say, okay, I want to lock. So, you know, it could be maybe just the, all right, so we'll just say, so, you know, experiment, right click with the adaptive voicings, but then you can just come over here and just change those voicings kind of independently of the other tracks, or if you want to do different tensions. All right, and another question, is there a way to create a printable chord chart from the chord track, maybe using the score function? All right, so let's come over. I want to take this patch. I'm going to create a blank event. I'm going to open the score editor. So I have a chord track here. I'm going to open the score editor. So just Command or Control plus the letter R. We see our chord track here. I'll just hide the name, or we see our score. So we have basically just a blank score. And what I want to do is go to my scores menu to advanced layout and show chord track. And then our chord track is automatically populated into the score editor for us. All right, so I think that's all the questions that were mailed in. And again, you could always mail questions into clubcubase@steinberg.de. Thanks for sending that. All right. Let me go back to where we were. All right, so we see from Nils, is there a workaround in Cubase Artist for the group editing function only Cubase Pro has? As far as I understand, it's a critical function for live drum editing. So I don't think that that capability is in Cubase Artist, so there's no real kind of workaround to it. You know, I mean, you could upgrade to Cubase Pro. And that's always a great solution. You know, sometimes I see people not want to upgrade and they spend, you know, $600 in plugins to get functionality that's in an upgrade that's much less expensive. So, you know, maybe if you need that functionality, you know, consider upgrading from Artist to Pro. All right, Jazzy Lamel asks, hey Greg, I'm not sure if you answered the question about Yamaha digital mixers using a control surface / interface for Cubase, your pros and cons of it. So, you know, you could use the TF series as an audio interface, but it doesn't function as a control surface. The new Yamaha DM series, like the DM3, DM7. So the DM3, there's a USB version, which will allow you to function as a USB audio interface and a control surface, and it's going to be almost like a Mackie control, so it's probably not going to do a lot of depth of editing for plugins and firing off keyboard, you know, user-definable functions. The DM7 series would give you, you know, probably even more channel faders to work with, and would have the audio could be recorded into Cubase via Dante, which is doing the audio over Ethernet. So they're not really, they will allow you to function as a, basically like a big Mackie control, and will allow you to pass audio, but, you may not be able to do quick controls and different functions. So think of panning, transport, faders primarily. So, but the new like DM3s are really, very compact 16 channel audio interface, 8 channels control surface with great DSP, and I think it's 6 outputs, 8 outputs. So, it's a great form factor for studio as well. So, okay, Uno Memento says we're over 100 now. We're on the way to salvation. All right. All right, we have Tiago also checking in from Brazil with Club to Breathe. We'll have our Brazilian contingent. All right, so you see Ash Rebel Hen Studio says, Greg, wow, I always wanted to have the ability to have multiple editors open. Great tip. You could thank the person for sending in the question. All right, so we see Tiago says, question, my Curve EQ is in demo mode and I can't take it off demo mode. Maybe because I installed Voxengo Curve EQ after installing Cubase Pro 12. I tried to uninstall the plugin, but didn't work. So I'm not sure if you installed from Voxengo, like as a separate plugin, or as just one of the plugins that comes with Cubase. But, it is part of the Cubase plugin set. So, you should be able to run it, but if you installed it as a separate tool, then that plugin may be like, it's probably not going to be licensed. So it'd probably be the earlier, or the version that comes with Cubase that's licensed. So make sure that I could do some research on it if you want to email me. All right, so it says, Greg, I'm using a Wavelab 11.2. If this is a dongle issue, what next? So 11.2 doesn't run on the USB e-licenser. It's only going to run on the Steinberg licensing. It says you tried entering the access code again. It says too old, and I have reinstalled e-licenser, so Cubase won't open 10 automatically. So, if you want to email me like a screenshot of your Steinberg Activation Manager and your Steinberg e-licenser, I'd be happy to take a look at it, but see if you have Wavelab in the Activation Manager and maybe you haven't activated it yet. But if you want to do that, you could send if you want to send screenshots, you can send them to me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so we have DJ FK just saying happy Friday to everyone. All right, so we see from Soren, thanks, Greg. I learned about the Arpachi SX pattern last Hangout. I got an idea that getting the block chords from chord pads is all right, and patterns gotten from the MIDI insert Arpachi SX solved. So, yep, that'll work. It's a great workaround, or a great solution, not necessarily, not even a workaround. All right, so we see Soren says, two guys have showed up in claims and have made my lyrics to my song Forever by East Street on Music Match. I fear that they'll try to steal royalty from text writing. I have contacted support. Yeah, it's always a bummer, you know. Like I love when, you know, people get royalty, you know, like a copyright infringement notice on Facebook for like a Mozart piece. You know, it's like, okay, I think it's in the public domain, you know, but someone has a sound recording, and it's kind of interesting technology how quickly they could pick it up. So, and how it could be abused by some people. All right, so we see Gareth is just finishing the Don't Slow Me Down mix. What freebies did I miss? So you missed the Neumann U87 microphone from 1967. So one owner. So Michael Pierce says, yes, when routing, always take copious notes, whether it's be physically for Patch Bay or through Army software, and keep a paper trail. It's good advice. And Garrett says, Army Total Mix is a brilliant software, but the total head screw took me years to get used to it. So. All right, so we see from Got Your, you have any suggestion for routing my outputs from Cubase to OBS? I want to take Groove Agent sampler to trigger samples live on stream from MIDI keyboard. So there's a number of different approaches. So, you know, if your audio interface has loopback, like, you know, the Steinberg UR interfaces, a lot of interfaces will have loopback. If you turn loopback on, you could have the output from Cubase loop back into the interface and out to a streaming device. There are some third-party software utilities. The method that I use just kind of keeps it very clean and simple for me during a live stream, because I have a lot of things to kind of multitask with, is I take my audio outputs and I use OBS for like this live stream. I just take the audio outputs from my interface in Cubase into a Yamaha. I'm using an AG08, and I used the AG08. I plugged my microphone into there so I could, you know, when I have to cough, or, you know, my son, you know, comes in a room and asks me a question, I can mute the mic. And I used the AG08 for the OBS, and I use one interface for Cubase, and that works very well. So if you have an old interface laying around, you know, just, you know, maybe use two interfaces. It works. It's super easy and very clean, and you don't have to worry about, you know, changing sample rates and different things and gotchas that could happen in a live stream. See, Garrett's baby face has lasted 11 years. All right, so you see Jazz Dude bought a second Army with the PCM CIA card. So, let me see, he says PCM CIE. So, the PCM CIA, if you want to remember that from old days, which is like a little credit card expansion slot, was, you know, people can't memorize computer industry acronyms. So, but yeah, I had one of those for years I would use on the road. Okay, so let's... Okay, so I just see maybe from DJ FK, it says, real question, master gain level. Let me just see if it's maybe directed towards... All right. All right, so you see DJFK just kind of writing maybe a sentence across multiple posts. Okay. All right, so we see from Patrice Schneider. She says, hi Greg. When I open Steinberg Download Assistant, the program wants to make an update of Media Bay, and then it asks me that Steinberg wants to install you a new utilitary and message the update fails. So, see if you just open up. So I'm not sure if you're opening it like by itself or when Cubase is open. I haven't really run into that, but if you want to send me an email, I could do some research on it for you. So if you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. But I haven't had that happen to me. So sometimes it may, in the background, be installing. It may need to update the e-licenser at times when you open up in case you need to do license transfers. So, maybe if you hit like Alt-Tab or Control-Tab on Mac to see if there's another window that's open in the background that may need attention, that's kind of maybe hidden behind another window. All right, so we see from Roger, hi Greg, did you use your Nano 2 controller? What is the most use cases, mix, VSTs, edit, or anything else? I have to say I really like my Nano 2 controller. It's probably the best $79 I spent in my studio for a long time. I mean, I use it for, just super quick controls. I mean, I wanted to try the new MIDI remote stuff that had something that was already populated with a that was kind of automatically detected, and I just connected it. It worked great. I can use it for mixing. I could use it for quick controls. I often make my own mapping pages, so I'll just go ahead and show like some of the mapping pages. So I could take this one controller that's laid out that's kind of automatically detected, and like if I want to do different functions, I just make a new mapping page and I could quickly go back. I could actually have a key, a button, switch to different mapping pages if you wanted to. But and for me, I'm sure like most people, they don't have a desk that's, infinite in size, in the Nano Control. Like I didn't want to have to buy new furniture for a control surface. So the Nano Control is like super small and fast and easy. Fits between my MIDI controller and my my MIDI keyboard. So I have to say I'm kind of a fan of the Nano Control stuff. So. All right, so we see, so from Patrice says, I tried to install them separately, but doesn't update. The problem is still there. So just out of curiosity, see if you go to, you could go to the Cubase downloads from the web page. So let me just look at that and see. So we get a Cubase Pro 12 downloads. just see if we can find this, but maybe try downloading it from the web interface. So let's say we'll go to Cubase Pro 12. And maybe just, you see the Steinberg Media Bay, maybe just try to install it directly from here and see if you get the message. I'm not sure if you've done it from the web browser as well. All right, we see Gareth is heading off to bed. So thanks for joining us. All right, so I think we are at the end of the questions. We'll see if there's any more questions that kind of sneak in. Thank you for all the great questions that people have sent. There's usually about a 20 to 30 second delay from when I talk to when you guys hear. So we'll see if there's any more questions to sneak in. We'll give it another minute or so. If not, we will wrap up. Let everyone get the start of their weekend. Thanks for spending part of your morning, afternoon, evening learning more about Steinberg products. We'll be here again on Tuesday and Friday of next week. So, and then like a week from Tuesday will be our, it'll be the last live stream of the month, and I'll try to get a guest lined up so we can share some insights. So I have someone in mind to ask. So see if there's more questions. All right, so we see Patrice just asked also, who could give me some tutorial because I need a lot of stepwise tutorial on audio because I record my full drum set in simultaneous tracks. Quantizing does not work. All right, so we'll show you just quickly how to quantize like a multi-track drum performance. Okay, so let's go ahead and so say first thing I did is I'll place all my drums. So select all your drums and right click, and we want to move selected tracks to new folder. All right, so what I want to do now is from the drums we could enable group editing. So now when I move one event, all of the events will kind of move together. So they'll be grouped. What I want to do now is we go to our quantize panel. And let me just see, it'll show up right here next to our quantize value. And what we see is all of our drums that we have set in the group that we're doing group editing on, and we could give priority to different drums. So we'll say my kick, I want my snare, and let's say in this case a hi-hat to have priority. And what this does is it places hit points across all of the different drums. So we'll do the thing that every drummer will hate. Let's put the click track on with the drums. So let me just, so now we'll just come here. So we hear like that snare fill was like usually around fills and maybe a little late. probably see like a snare fill. We'll listen to the snare. So on the snare fill, it's sped up. So now that we've placed kind of all of these markers, what we want to do is we're going to slice. So we're going to now just come over here. We have our markers set up. We're going to make sure that we have audio warp turned off here, and then we can say let's just slice all of the markers, and that creates like thousands of little slices. And now at this point, what we want to do is we're going to say I want to quantize this to 16th notes. We'll say quantize. All the slices have now been moved, and we will, and as we move slices around, sometimes it may leave gaps. Like here, as we moved the event, it could leave a gap, and we want to close those gaps by applying a crossfade. So now as we listen to our drums, their performance and timing has now been quantized. And we see that that fill is right on the money. Listen to our snares. So that way, that's how you could do a quick multi-track drum quantize. All right. All right, so we see Steinberg MIDI's, he's cooking while watching. All right. Glad you could join us today. All right, we'll see if there's any more. We have a couple minutes left. See if there's any more questions. If not, we will go ahead and wrap up a couple minutes early. Thanks again for spending time learning more about your Cubase program. And if you have anything you want to send me, like, you know, any like more detailed questions, or if I asked for to send something, the email address is clubcubase@steinberg.de. And, you know, I'm really grateful for everyone that spends time on the live streams. I think it's a wonderful community, and I hope it's helpful for people. And, you know, it's really appreciated. Everyone, you know, just doing such wonderful things, and everyone making wonderful music with their Cubase. So with that, I will guess we're out of questions. We'll go ahead and wrap up just a couple minutes early. And everyone please stay safe and healthy over the weekend. And we'll see everyone back on Tuesday. Take care. Goodbye.